Well, I am excited to have Kai Mathis with us. Kai works in production and in post production and has worked on shows like Big Brother, Hell's Kitchen, Utopia, and is working on shows with the Food Network. But I think the hardest job, Kai, that you've had was living with me in college. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry about the curling iron burn in the carpet in your bedroom. I hope it got fixed at some point in time.
I'm sure it probably did at some point. You really had some issues in that house.
And you brought to my attention that I tried to burn a plate on the stove.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah.
I
blocked. What's a red burner? That doesn't go well.
I blocked that one from my memory. So, but in all seriousness,
we survived.
Yes, we did. Tell us a little bit about your family and like where you grew up and everything.
I grew up in Cloquet, which I'm sure most people know is just outside of Duluth. And then I went to college up in Bemidji and worked there at a TV station on the campus in Bemidji. And I was there for a handful of years before I decided to move out to LA. And then very shortly after I moved to LA, my parents moved from Cloquet to Wadena.
Yeah, so we have a little bit of a local flavor here.
Exactly.
Yes. Super. So, what brought you out to Los Angeles area?
Well, like I mentioned, I was working at Lakeland Public Television in Bemidji. And I kind of, 2 years out of college, hit as high as I could possibly go there. I was directing a nightly newscast. I was producing segments for the network and all that things. And there wasn't anywhere else I could really go. And there was a volunteer that came in, Dave Smith, amazing human being. His son, Jason, lived in LA. And Dave would come in and we would chat and he'd be like, you need to get out of Bemidji. You need to go to Los Angeles. I've got a contact. You can, so you're not on your own in Los Angeles. And it was to the point where I'd be out at the grocery store and people would come up to me that I didn't know. And they'd be like, are you Kai? And I'm like, yes. And like, you need to move to Los Angeles. So like he had this whole network of people trying to help push me out here. And then it was actually a week straight of 35 below raw temperatures. I woke up and I'm like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So I turned in my rent check and out the door I was. So
yeah, so you work in production and post-production, and kind of tell us what is the difference between them?
Well, production is where everything happens with the actual footage that you see that is on the air. So that's where you get everything shot. And then in post-production, they take in all that footage, sort through it, edit it, try to make some kind of sense of it, color correct it, and then send it on its way so that you can see it on your TV.
And you sent me some pictures of some of your production work, and it looks extremely intimidating. So you've got this wall of monitors, essentially. Kind of give us an idea of what production is like. And you obviously, I'm sure every production is different on the show, on different shows, but just some of the things that you've worked on, like for instance, Big Brother.
So, like a lot of the reality shows I work on, like Big Brother and Hell's Kitchen, they are kind of unique unto themselves because they have such a live aspect and so many robotic cameras all over the place. So like on Big Brother, when you walk into their master control room, there's an entire wall just made up of monitors, basically. And we, on Big Brother, there, I believe, are 72 robotic cameras. And then they also use 7 handheld cameras that are on a track that roll around the inside of the house. And then there's mirrors so that they can shoot through the glass. So you walk in and you can see every single robotic camera that is available to you up on that wall. And then what my job, it's called a switcher on that show, which is basically what it sounds like. I'm switching cameras. So I'm working with a robotic camera operator. And so if somebody tells us, okay, let's go into the living room and cover a scene with 3 people sitting in there. So it's my job then to find the cameras on the wall, and then punch them in, because even though we can see all the cameras, we're only recording 3 at a time. And there are 2 separate setups, 2 switchers on at a time, so you can cover 2 stories at a time. So I will go into the living room, I will punch into the router, basically, what cameras I want so that I can cover the scene. And my robo camera operator will get the shots of a single of Bob and a 2 shot of these people. And then I will cut basically as if you would see it on TV. So I basically cut between the people that are talking. And then I will call for the handheld operators to roll in as well. So I'm also kind of like a multi-camera director on that show.
And it's not live, like you were saying, but you almost act as if it's live, correct? Is that, like, as far as switching your cameras and everything?
On most shows, correct. Big Brother is unique because they do stream to the internet 24 hours a day. And so that is in particular why we have to do what is called a line cut, because people pay money to watch these live feeds and watch these people living their life in this house every single hour of the day. So like Big Brother is very, very unique in that way. Most shows do not do that. Most shows, like on Hell's Kitchen, for instance, I will, if they're in the kitchen cooking, I will put in the robotic cameras into the feeds that we're recording, but then I won't touch it. I'll like kind of let them sit back a little bit so that it gives the editors more options, so that they know that in this deck, it's always going to be this camera. I can switch to it. I probably just got you a little confused on that one, but
no, you're good.
But yeah,
you're good.
Like I say, Big Brother is unique, a very unique show because of the fact that it is live to the internet.
And how many people are in the control room?
So in the Big Brother control room, you have, like I mentioned, 2 switchers at a time, so you can carry 2, cover 2 stories, and then 2 robotic operators as well, 1 for each side. And then back behind us is a row of people, and there are 2 people, 1 for each side, that are called loggers, and they basically are listening to the contestants and typing every single word they say every moment, so that it goes into a program so that later on it's easy to search, and everything is just cataloged perfectly. And then sitting next to them is usually 2 people. They're called story department, and they are telling the switchers what stories to cover, and they are the ones that are responsible for taking all this massive amount of footage and making a story out of it and making sure that you see something that makes sense on air.
That all sounds so overwhelming.
It's a lot, especially with the switchers, because in your headset, you're listening to the contestants, you're listening to the story department, and then you also have to communicate with audio, so sometimes you hear audio coming back and forth. So on a regular day, you have easily like 8 or 9 voices happening in your head all day long.
I can't even handle my own voice in my head. That is crazy. And then are you on location? Is this house like out in a street, or is this in a studio? How does this work?
So the Big Brother house is built inside a sound stage on a lot, a CBS Radford lot. And I love that lot because it has so much history in TV. It's where they shot Mary Tyler Moore and Gilligan's Island and just all these amazing, fantastic shows of yesteryear. So you walk around and all the streets are labeled with those shows, and they have plaques up on all the stages of what was shot there. And so yeah, it's just built into a soundstage. And with Big Brother, they keep that. Most shows, they'll come in, they'll build the set, they'll shoot, and then as soon as it's done, they rip everything out. With Big Brother, because of how intense that house is, that just stays up year round.
So it's the same house every year?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And then, how close are you with your control room? Whereabouts is that on the set?
So basically the control room is upstairs a little bit from the house. So the house is a 2-story, it's built 2 stories. But we're kind of tucked over one corner of it just above them, if that makes sense.
Okay. And I was watching a video of kind of behind the scenes of Big Brother, and they were talking to the sound guys and how they catch a lot, even though they're trying to whisper.
Yeah, there's very little that we don't catch in that house because they're completely mic'd up. There's mics, just room mics hanging in every single room. They can't escape. That's what they signed up for.
Now, tell us a little bit about your post-production work. What kind of things are you doing in post-production?
So in post-production, especially most recently, I've been working with a company that does a lot of work for Food Network. So I've been doing like Kids Baking Championship, which is one of my favorite shows ever to work on because those children are adorable and talented, and everything about that show is wonderful. I just finished a Martha Stewart one called Bakeaway Camp. And what I do on those shows is I'm the online editor. So we have online and offline, and basically offline is where all the creative happens, is how I like to say it, although you can say that what I do is also creative, but they're the ones making all of the decisions on what the show looks like. They're building the stories. They're doing all the cuts and adding all noting where they want all the graphics to go. So the show comes to me locked. So picture lock, which means it's done. It's ready to go. Except I take it and then I color correct it. So I make sure all the cameras match. I add graphics if need be. And then I also will add any blurs if need be. So if there's something that we can't show, if it's a product that hasn't been cleared, if it's an accidental little butt crack sticking out. I mean, I've done a little bit of blurring on everything you can imagine.
Wow. And then do you have to create the graphics, or you kind of have something already created and you use that for each one, or how does that work?
Most shows, they have a graphics house or a graphics person that will build everything and then send it to me. So then I'm just importing it and then putting it into the show so it looks nice and sharp.
Nice. And how is, when you're color correcting, does it look completely different when you first get it to what is finished? How does that?
It definitely depends on the shows. Most of the time it looks very drastically different. It also very much depends if it's shot inside a studio or if it's out in the wild, as I like to say. I work on a show called Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders Making the Team. And that one is what we call like run and gun style, where it's more they're following what's happening as opposed to making those things happen. Because most reality shows are very, very heavily produced, and they are saying where everything is going, and they're setting up scenes to do. And on this Dallas Cowboy Cheerleaders, it's just we're following them. So they don't have a lot of time to re-white balance or reset the cameras, whether or not they're inside or outside. So it on some shows it's extreme on how different it looks before and after I touch it.
And now, how did you learn all of this stuff? Is it kind of on the job? I mean, granted, we learned a lot at Lakeland Public Television, but not quite to this level.
Right. Well, when I was at Lakeland, one of the things that I love the most about getting my start there is I learned every position. I'm not an expert in any position by any means, but I learned how every little thing works. So then when I moved out here, I was actually at a bonfire at the beach, and my friend introduced me to somebody and said, "This is my friend Kai, she's looking for a job." And my friend said, "Can she type?" Thinking, oh, I could be a logger and just listen to them do that. And he replied, "No, she can run an entire TV station." And so because of that, I got this switcher job. Because I understood live switching. I had a news background. I had a little bit of an editing background, so I understood what is needed in the field in order to put together a story in post. And so the switcher position is a unique one. Does not exist on most shows. So it's very much learning on the job. And so that one just kind of varies, and there's different things that happen on every show. For post-production, a friend of mine knew that I'm a smart person. I really needed a job. So he got me a job as an assistant editor on a show working a graveyard shift. I knew nothing. I'd never touched an Avid before. I had learned on Final Cut. And so because I was on a graveyard shift, there wasn't as much work to do. And I was able to learn on the job on that. So most of it is just on the job, and almost every single job I've had has come from a friend. So kind of works well.
Nice. Again, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right?
Yes, to a point. I mean, I've worked up with a lot of people that fail up, but if you're not competent, you're making your friend look bad, you're all that stuff. So it is important that you know how to do it. But like I say, it is definitely who you know in order to just get your foot in that door.
Yes, absolutely. That's how I got my job here.
Yeah.
So, hey, well, thank you so much for talking with us today. I greatly appreciate it. I do have to ask, what celebrities have you met?
Yikes. Well, I mean, are you talking like just a hello? Or are you talking...
like through maybe through work, I guess. Have you run into any on the sound or the studio? What did you call it? The sound stage or?
Well, so, I mean, obviously I've had many, many, many interactions with Gordon Ramsay. He is by far the favorite host I've ever worked with on any show. He is so incredibly nice to the crew. After every elimination that we have, he walks through the control rooms, he hugs and kisses everybody, telling everybody they do a great job. So by and away, he's my favorite one to work with. But I did do a job a handful of years ago that was one of my favorites. It was for Emerson College. And they just wanted to go around and interview older comedians and get their stories on tape. So I went to B. Arthur's house. I went to Dick Van Dyke's house. I went to Buck Henry's house. Like all these amazing, amazing older comedians that it's just mind-blowing that I'm in their house. I'm talking to them. They're offering me water and food, those fun things. The only time I kind of fangirled out a little bit, where I was just like, oh my god, was I was working the Green Lantern red carpet premiere, and Ryan Reynolds walked past me and did a little nod thing, and I was like, hi. So, but for the most part, if you're not going inside their house, usually when you see people, you just kind of do a nod and smile, and
on the inside, it's squealing. That'd be me.
Exactly. Who is it? You were a Party of Five fan, weren't you? Or was that somebody else?
No, I've not watched. I never watched that. I know of it, though.
There'll be, because there's a handful of times where because I go to lunch by myself when I'm working many times, and you just go sit up at the sushi bar or whatever, and Scott Wolf comes in, sits next to you, and you kind of chat a little bit, but it's awkward because they know, it's just, but it's fun.
Nice. I would have fangirled with B. Arthur, as I loved the Golden Girls, and I remember when you did that because you texted me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and she was exactly the human being you thought she was, where just just telling how it was, and if our interviewer got off track somehow, he would just be like, what? No, what are you talking about? You need to work this out. Figure this out now. And it's just I love that so much.
Very cool.
So,
well, again, Thank you for talking with us today. I always like knowing what's going on behind the scenes, or learning, I should say, about what's going on behind the scenes, because I find this type of business fascinating, and a lot goes into making what you see on television. So
exactly, every single show you see on TV has had probably 200 to 300 people working on that show. So
yes, well, thank you, and thanks for doing what you do, and I appreciate you talking with us today, Kai.
It was wonderful having a chat. Hi, Mom and Dad.